What's up guys, welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
The food, which they found so tasty before, suddenly lost all its flavor. There were two reasons why they couldn't do such a thing. They had only stayed in the city for a short period of time, but it had already grown on them. The thought that this city would vanish disheartened them. There was another reason, too. Considering the strength of the boss in that labyrinth, it wasn't hard for them to believe that the powerful people in this country had incredible abilities.
Normally, I'd think it's only natural for the guardians who protect important facilities to be strong, wouldn't it? But is this country's army really weaker than the guardians of the empire? That borders on wishful thinking.
Shinji reasoned.
That's what I think as well. Demon Lord Rimuru himself must be on another level.
Mark murmured in agreement.
A long time ago, that evil dragon Veldora annihilated an entire city, and that story doesn't seem to be a joke. I think even that White King is capable of the same.
Shinji nodded. In all honesty, the monsters in this country would be capable of causing similar calamities.
It's just my estimation, but it seems like archdemons are capable of using nuclear magic, and I think that is comparable to the tactical nuclear weapons on Earth.
I think so, too. Our common sense dictates that war is about numbers, but fighting that boss using quantities seems futile.
I don't think we can win unless we have dozens of warriors who are at our level.
They all had worry in their eyes as they glanced at each other once again. It was immediately after this that they received the magic communication from Gadra. An old man prostrated himself before me. Behind him were the three challengers, who I had been watching on the big screen yesterday, also prostrating. The old man was called Gadra. He was the one who had requested an audience with me through Raisin and Diablo. He wasn't wearing anything flashy, just a somewhat high-tier magical robe. His eyes were sharp and didn't match his old body. Just as I'd thought, Shinji was actually Shinji. His real name was apparently Shinji Tanimura. It appeared that the other two had registered themselves using their real names. These three seemed to be this Archmage Gadra's subordinates. The trio worked for Yuki, but this time, they were under Gadra's care as assistants in this investigation. That was what they'd told me so far. Gadra assumed this pose right after he had finished talking and the others followed suit. But if they were to keep this up any longer, the talks would go nowhere.
Well, I figured as much. Anyway, we really can't have a comfortable discussion like this, so why don't we go somewhere else?
Raise your heads.
Shion ordered them after I spoke. For some reason, she said it rather pompously. This was why I found formalities annoying. I always felt like I messed up the procedure, and the truth was that I really didn't want to do this.
Yes, ma'am.
Given Gadra's exaggerated reply, I already knew that the upcoming discussions would be a hassle. The meeting place was the reception room, the cheaper one. If I had to pick, I'd prefer this one since I could comfortably relax there. The opulent one had high-class furnishings, and I just couldn't stop worrying about it getting nicks and scratches. If someone spilled tea, the expensive carpet would be ruined. To live within your means, as a lower middle-class citizen, I was more comfortable with the furniture I was used to. Shinji and the others appeared to be of the same mind. Their faces weren't quite as gloomy.
Coffee or tea? Which do you prefer?
I asked them without beating about the bush.
Then, coffee,
answered Shinji.
Shinji.
Gadra's expression changed to anger as he shouted, but I calmed him down.
Gadra-san, how about you?
Me? Then, I'll have the same thing as Shinji.
Huh? Maybe coffee didn't exist in the Empire? I felt like it did, but it might not be in their market. When I turned to Mark and Shin, they started nodding wordlessly. Guess they wanted the same thing, too.
Shuna, for Americans.
Americans?
Shinji sputtered.
You want something weak then? Maybe a blend? How about our national pride, a tempest?
No, I didn't mean it like that. Your Majesty Rimuru, are you perhaps an otherworlder?
Shinji inquired.
Yeah, what about it?
Why is he asking this now? Wouldn't that be part of basic information collection? As I dwelled on the thought, I examined the four of them a little closer and noticed that only Gadra had an "I screwed up" expression. He was probably already aware but had forgotten to tell them. Whatever, it didn't really matter.
Alright, let's hear the details.
Shuna gave them the coffee she had prepared. There was also milk and sugar on the table. I listened to what Gadra had to say while Shinji and his friends looked really impressed with the coffee set. Shinji took a sip of his coffee and murmured, "This is delicious," which earned him a sharp glare from Gadra. I was kind enough to ignore it.
Actually, I am a reincarnated person.
Old Master Gadra casually dropped a sudden bombshell. The trio was just as shocked as I was and turned to face him. Master Gadra had wanted to become a great sorcerer for as long as he could remember, so he reincarnated himself countless times. Each time he was reincarnated, he studied all the treasured books he could get his hands on in various places. Hence, he had accumulated a vast wealth of knowledge. It was during this time, when he was researching magic in secret, that he met Adalman and became fast friends.
As I said before, I have nothing but hatred for the Western Holy Church. They killed my friend Adalman. For centuries, I have been planning to pit the Empire against them.
Following his small rant, Gadra continued his story. When he learned that Adalman had fallen into a trap and was killed, he vowed to take revenge. With this resolve, he went to the Empire with nothing but his name and labored to slowly gain their trust. He seemed to have fought Veldora as well. His past was more extreme than I'd imagined.
To be honest, I am glad that I had completed my reincarnation ritual in advance. I wish to see it with my own eyes, the natural-born apex of monsters.
Only 4 true dragons existed in this world and they were the strongest race in existence, standing above all other monsters. Gadra said that from his actual battle experience, he didn't think that the Imperial army could ever beat Veldora. He pointed this out right in front of the dragon himself, so that guy was now repeatedly glancing at me with a delighted expression. Good grief, stop it already. Sure, he's amazing, but I don't feel the need to praise him for it.
No, they could have achieved a tactical victory, but those imbeciles wanted to control Veldora-sama. I advised them over and over again to give up since it was impossible and futile.
Gadra was only interested in taking his revenge against Rumanism in the West, so he didn't want to expend any men on something which was evidently in vain. He desperately tried to make them understand the reality of the situation, but the corps commanders, all of them blinded by pride, refused to listen. And yet, from his story so far, Gadra seemed to be a man of integrity, but simultaneously responsible for the Empire's growing imperial ambitions. I asked him to cut to the chase and elaborate on recent developments in the Empire.
So you're saying that it's mostly your fault that the Empire is trying to start a war?
Well, that's one part of it, I guess.
No, you're trying to be evasive. Regardless of how you looked at it, the fault lies with this old man. Realizing that I was in a bad mood, Gadra rushed to make excuses.
It's not like that. The Empire has always been a hegemonic power, and if we don't set a direction, the ravages of war will spread throughout the land. That's why I had them look westward. Well, it fits with my purpose, too. I thought it would be convenient.
How could it be convenient? We're getting dragged into this for no reason at all.
I was also against invading the Great Jura Forest, considering Veldora-sama lives in it, and I didn't want them to make the same mistake as before. I proposed that it would be better to focus on the Dwarven Kingdom, but there are too many stubborn people who would rather solve everything by force.
Gadra began ranting about something again, but my attention was focused on a different point entirely.
Wait a minute, so the Empire really is planning to attack the Dwarven Kingdom?
I hadn't really expected this possibility to be true. Did we now have to consider the potential of them passing through the Dwarven Kingdom?
I see you are aware of that. However, it's not like we're attacking them. My proposal was to form an alliance with King Gazel and have them turn a blind eye towards any action taken by our army. I hold a grudge only against the Western Holy Church.
Gadra was already informed that Adalman was safe and was promised a meeting with him right after this one. As a result, he realized how fruitless all of his efforts had been and turned his back on the war. It seemed that he was close to the Emperor, but not close enough to put a stop to the whole military campaign. Thus, he planned to advocate against the war in the upcoming conference. It was a bit too convenient to think that Gadra's help could avert the war, but if it did, then I would definitely stop complaining. In any case, we wanted to get as much information as we could out of him. Benimaru and others were on standby in the adjacent room, listening to our conversation while holding a strategy meeting. My job was to keep Gadra happy and talking.
And King Gazel refused, didn't he?
Well, that was a given. And then, a plan to assassinate him was proposed, but I was against it. If we're going to do it, then we should face them head on, is what I told them.
That's not a scenario you should be proud of. Old Gadra was way more militant than I thought. Even though I was getting more astounded by the minute, I still kept him talking. He told us a lot of useful information, from the breakdown of the Imperial Army to the mindset of the upper echelon. He even revealed the shocking news that Yuki was planning a coup. I had pretty much wrung him dry at this point. Finally, Gadra began speaking his mind in an honest and lighthearted way.
I don't have any obligations to the Empire. The army corps that I raised was disbanded, and my men were taken away. These 3 are my disciples, so I borrowed them. Although it's hard to say that he is well, if Adalman is doing all right, then I will not have any regrets leaving the Empire behind.
He said it himself that deep in his heart, he was a self-centered person with no sense of loyalty whatsoever. This old man really was something. I had to keep it a secret, but I couldn't help but feel some respect for him.
That's why, from now on, if your majesty could grant me the honor of even the lowest office among your followers, I will work my fingers to the bone.
The guts he had to ask me to be my subordinate even though he had just stated that he had no loyalty. Yet, I didn't dislike this sort of person. However, Benimaru and the others were listening to this conversation in the room next door. I had a feeling that Gadra's attitude might anger them, so calming them down might be a bit difficult. So after that, I decided to hire old Gadra on a temporary basis, treating him as a guest. Since he expressed his desire to be my subordinate, I intended to work him as hard as possible. I didn't expect loyalty, but I did expect him to spare no effort. For the time being, I brought him to meet a Dalman and also gave him permission to teleport to the 70th floor. His knowledge would be honestly beneficial, so making him Ramirez's assistant might have been a good idea. Prior to that, however, I planned to have him do a small task in the Empire. Shinji and his team decided to stay and immigrate to Tempest. After taking some time off, they were going to decide about their line of work for the future. It was the trio's request following Gadra's persistent pleas to take him in, so I had no reason to decline. Besides, it was clear to them that they would be permanently exiled if they betrayed me. They clearly didn't want that to happen, and so they pledged their allegiance. Nonetheless, the trio still held some respect for Yuki and didn't want to go against him. I didn't think there would be any problems in that regard.
We have a complicated relationship with Yuki's side. It's like we are in somewhat of a ceasefire right now. To be honest, I want to get back at him for pissing me off so many times, but somehow, I can't bring myself to hate him.
He may be like that, but despite it all, he was one of Shizu-san's students. When I remembered Shizu-san, who had happily talked to me about Yuki, I couldn't help but feel forgiving. I think I was being a bit naive, but it was also out of goodwill since we shared the same homeland. There wouldn't be a next time, but for now, let's put our differences and grudges on hold. On the other hand, whether or not I could trust him was a different matter. If I had trusted that bastard, I would have ended up getting killed several times over.
It would do all of you good to not trust Yuki too much.
I warned them. Gadra nodded for some reason. It seemed like he had something to say about this. I have an inkling that Yuki and Gadra knew each other and had a cooperative relationship, so it was a good decision to bring Gadra into the fold, since he would serve as a good link to Yuki. I believed that I could trust Gadra due to the simple fact that he doesn't blindly follow Yuki.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel. Shout out to the new members of AnimeKouhai supporters: Yeonjunam, Jovan Ray Jadrak, Ruben, Ken, Mario Vasquez Rodriguez, Matt Alphonse Magpantay, Luis Quero. Thank you so much for helping out. Shout out to the commenters: Wabalabadabdub, Rembaru, Luminaseka T. I'll see you guys in the next video.